Welcome to Inside Blockchain Podcast. My name is Tony Obiajuru, but you can call me Tony Talks. What I intend to achieve with this podcast is to help you make sense of the blockchain industry and how this amazing technology is redefining work, setting new paradigm shifts in businesses, and helping to reshape societal interaction. I bring you Inside Blockchain Podcast, the most intellectual source of discuss with industry leaders and enthusiasts. Now here's just a brief disclaimer. All opinions shared by our guests on this podcast are exclusively their own opinions. They do not suggest investment recommendations of their companies, neither should you take this information as an investment advice, as you are solely responsible for your own investments. On today's episode, we will be discussing why blockchain education is important in Africa, or rather for Africa. And my guest today joining me all the way from Zambia is Yaliwe Soko. She is the current chairperson of United Africa Blockchain Association and also the founder of Essence Crypto Consultants and United Africa Women in Blockchain. Now here's just a short brief on my guest. She is one of the very few African women to be fully involved in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. She took up interest in blockchain technology since 2016 and has worked as a freelance Bitcoin and cryptocurrency consultant for an online investment firm. Hello, Yaliwe. Thank you for joining me on the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well as well. Okay, so having gone through your just a brief about yourself, I'm seeing here that you took interest in blockchain technology in the year 2016. So can you tell us more about yourself and how you were able to transition from what you were doing at the time, to cheerleading a blockchain platform?
Okay, so it mainly started as a part-time job. I still had my 8 to 5 job, which I still have right now, and I needed extra income. So I got a job as a consultant, and we were paid in Bitcoin, which was very, very interesting for me.
Wow.
And I started digging deeper into the technology. And then along the way, there was actually word that my company could close. So I looked at myself and I said, you know what? I don't want to look for another job. I don't want to start with the job market. So what do I do that is going to make me relevant, not only now, but for the future? Mm-hmm. That is how I started looking into blockchain technologies, and I started researching and teaching myself and building a curriculum, which right now, as I speak, is a 117 pages document that I use to educate myself. And I started using that as well to educate women. So we would have talks over coffee. So we started as the Johannesburg Women in Blockchain, and now we've evolved to the United Africa Women in Blockchain and Artificial Intelligence, which was launched on the 2nd of August and was adopted by the United Africa Blockchain Association.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. So, Yaliwe, what were you doing before, this happened? What was your life like then?
Okay, so I've always been curious, but I was not even, let me not say I was, I'm still working for an oil and gas company. If you're in Nigeria, you should be aware of Owando.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yes. So I'm still working for Owando, but my job has become flexible because they understand what I do. But it was the regular stuff, 8 to 5, finance, just calculations, and it's routine work. Yeah. So I had the time to actually look into the technologies. That's why I actually got a part-time job.
Okay, that's great. So we're actually talking about why blockchain education is important for Africa, or rather in Africa. So quickly, at what stage what present stage can we say Africa is, with the blockchain revolution?
To be honest, Africa is still at the infancy stage. And why I say this is because not all the countries in Africa are really active when it comes to blockchain technologies. Yes, some people in other parts of Africa that are aware what Bitcoin is, which they do not fully understand, but they know that it's one way of making money. It's magic money over the internet, and they want to get involved. So we're still at the infancy stage. I know there's countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania coming up, Mauritius. Right now, as we speak, I'm in Zambia, and I'll be holding a talk this evening. I can see there's an interest, but people don't really understand this thing. So we're not even,
on the low.
Yeah. We're still
at the
we have a long way
stage.
to go. Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think blockchain education is actually important?
Blockchain education is important because it will allow Africans to actually take part in the digital revolution. I believe if we do not take part right now, if we do not position ourselves, we'll be stuck in the Stone Age. And why aren't people involved? It's because they don't understand what blockchain is, and they cannot even differentiate between blockchain and Bitcoin. So every time you speak blockchain, they think of scams, and they think of something of how to make a quick buck. So we need a lot of education in order for them to understand what is this technology about, how can it change my life, despite the aspect that we can make money, or the euphoria of getting rich, but how can it transform different sectors in Africa? I normally say Africa needs the blockchain because Africa is emerging, and as we emerge, we're catching up with the rest of the world in terms of technology and how we can apply technology to different industries. I'll give you, for example, there's some places I've been to in Africa whereby right now the Home Affairs Department is not even computerized, So we need to educate them and tell them, what, you can also, especially for the local person, it also enables them to know the power that they hold, right? I'll give you an example of a farmer this farmer is maybe producing coffee, for example, right? And they have buyers. And sometimes these farmers will supply this coffee, and at the end of the day, it will take forever for them to get paid. And sometimes what happens is that the same people they supplied the coffee to, and if they need to grow that coffee or that corn, they will sell them back that same corn at a very high price, because these farmers have also not been paid yet. They're struggling. But if they had all this on a smart contract, they will know the rights that they have. So we need to educate them of the power that they have as well. Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually awesome. Considering the fact that the technology, as well as the other cryptocurrencies, are helping to reshape societal interaction, the way people carry out businesses, how the technology is completely overhauling the way digital transactions are conducted. But then again, I want to ask: is Africa really ready for the fourth industrial revolution? And if yes, why do you think so?
I would say some parts of Africa with great infrastructure, yes. I mean, like I said earlier on, there's some parts of Africa whereby government departments don't even have computers. There's some parts of Africa where people don't even, high schools don't even teach or teach people how to use computers. You have to learn these things on your own once you're out of school. So I think we need to know, where do we start with the infrastructure, right? And then we start with the basics. It just simply means having computers in the right places, in the institutions where you know that this is where you have the youth, empowering the youth. Then we can say we're ready. We don't need, I'm not saying we have buildings, but we have, let's say, a stable network, internet network in lots of areas. Data is very expensive right now in Africa. I mean, somebody asked me some time back and says, Yaliwe, what is the mining rate of Bitcoin in Africa? I said, listen, very few people mine. First and foremost,
Yeah.
we have a lot of electricity problems, right? There's load shedding. I could be in the middle of maybe trying to guess in the mining transaction, and then the power just goes off. I lose that transaction. So it's a lot that needs to be put in place. There's a lot of structure that needs to come in place. But I know as we move along, we'll get there eventually. We just need the right players.
Yeah, in the space, you like you rightly mentioned, electricity is actually a big problem. But is electricity something the blockchain can solve? The challenges that are around electricity.
Definitely, there's a startup in South Africa that is using the blockchain and solar energy put together. You see, so it's also a matter of innovation, right? So we need to know Africa is rich. Africa has a lot of resources. So how do we tap into that? And how do we merge these technologies with what we have right now? We cannot look at what we don't have. We have to use what we have on the ground.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. It's just a matter of innovation. And I mean, Africa has brilliant people. We just need a shift of mindset, and we have to, like I said, we have to educate and tell the youth that you can do this, and we need to create platforms for the youth to be able to explore with what they have on the ground.
Okay, fantastic. Now, recently I was in the University of Ibadan here in Nigeria, and my organization, Crypto TV Plus, we kickstarted this campus tour. Taking the education of blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies to them, helping them to understand this, and one of the conversant questions that kept coming from the audience was the fact that how can I use the blockchain technology, or preferably how can I integrate or implement the blockchain technology in the activities that I carry out in schools. So Yaliwe, I would need you to help me explain this. So what are the different sectors, that can benefit from the blockchain technology, and how is this going to be possible?
Okay, I'll look at maybe two key areas. I think firstly, it's the educational sector as well. Okay. Why I say this is that in Africa, I don't know about Nigeria, but in Africa, we have a problem whereby people are sitting in jobs they don't qualify for, right? Why? Because of fraudulent results. People can forge results here and there, and they're sitting in positions that the rightful people are jobless. So why don't we have verification processes in place whereby the educational system sits on the blockchain? That way, nobody can come and say, well, I qualify for this. We've had a lot of such incidences, especially in South Africa, where CEOs are sitting in big multinational companies with fraudulent documents.
Wow.
So it can be applied to the educational sector. Another sector it can be applied to is that I'm really passionate about is the health sector, right? Especially when it comes to counterfeit medicines.
Okay.
Because that is one thing that has been a problem on the continent. You find that there's a lot of counterfeit medicines on the market, and sometimes I blame a lot on, ignorance to an extent and corruption to an extent.
Yeah, they work hand in hand.
Exactly. It could have been one corrupt official that allowed these things, or a number of corrupt officials that allowed these things to come into the country.
People are just simply ignorant.
It could be just exactly, or we just don't have the right verification systems or tracking systems to know what is the origin of these medicines. And so the health sector as well. I'm really passionate about those two. Supply chain as well. So it's just a lot of industries that it can be applied to. But one thing that I've learned is that not every industry needs the blockchain, right? So
not every industry.
You're applying when you're applying this, you have to actually look at things like, okay, do I need a database? Remember, a blockchain is a ledger. So do I really need a database? Do I need to record certain things? Like I said, looking at the educational sector, the results and learners and everybody's recorded, right, on a system, on a database. So that works. So we have to just look into what kind of industry do I want to get into, and what this database, will it be shared? Does it need to be public, or does it need to be private? So I think there's a lot of things that need to be put into consideration, but I mean, that's a story for another day.
Yeah, but then again, voting is actually part of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Voting is actually part of it, and Voting is, well, it needs, I don't know how to say it, but it needs a very open, it needs a very open-minded government, right? Because how do you cut off, because most of the African leaders thrive on corruption, right? If we had to make voting very transparent, so it could mean cutting off that oxygen supply that they live off. So voting is one of the very important sectors, but how many governments are open to that? So I think it needs a very open-minded government.
Yeah, it's an area that we should really pay attention to. Seeing the blockchain
Very
technology
fragile.
being implemented. Okay, yeah, we've actually seen very positive news of some African countries, like Uganda here. We have Kenya, where they are actually
Yes.
making or
And
taking
Sierra Leone,
positive
yeah.
steps, Sierra Leone and the likes of how they can integrate, the blockchain. Quite a number of works, are being done. Can you just briefly explain some of the features of the blockchain technology?
Pardon, let me just repeat.
Okay, yeah. So can you just briefly explain the features of the blockchain technology? What makes it so unique?
Okay, so what makes it unique is firstly it's transparent, right?
Okay.
It's efficient. So when I talk of transparency, if it's a public blockchain, and let's say we're talking, for example, land registrations and stuff, people can actually know the rightful owners of certain. I'll give you an example right now. So I'm in Zambia, and you should look into this, right? There's
Okay.
48 houses that have been built, and these houses collect rent, but nobody knows who owns them.
Wow.
So how is that possible?
I was going to ask that too.
So, so those are some of the things I'm looking into, and people are like, wow, this could be the eighth, ninth wonder of the world, How come these houses that have been built, rent is being collected, but nobody can track and trace who owns these
The
houses?
rightful owner.
So, exactly. And everybody denies which means they were built in a corrupt way. It could be somebody sitting at the top.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, transparency. Efficiency as well,
Okay.
because once transactions are recorded, there's no going back. So which means people have to be really careful when they're actually recording these transactions on the blockchain, and immutable. Like I said, if you look at a lot of these records, I mean, you could have something recorded on a computer, but somebody can go out there and change right?
it, yeah.
It can be changed. Exactly. But once something has been recorded on the blockchain, it cannot be changed. So those are the features that actually make it very, very
Very
secure. And like we're speaking of voting, people cannot vote twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Once the vote has gone through, it has
has
gone
gone.
through, and it will also help us track. Let's say there's a number, 10,000 voters in a country, and out of those 10,000, only 9,000 voted, right? And then they're not going to count 10,000 because that is recorded and it is time stamped. So everything is recorded at the exact time that it happens.
And everybody
So
can see, and everybody can actually see that.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Yaliwe, for that. So before we, talk about what you guys are doing at the United Africa Blockchain Association as the chairperson, what is your ideal picture of Africa and the world in the next few years?
Okay, so I see...
in line with the advent of blockchain technology.
Yes. Yes, I see an Africa whereby everybody is equal and is included. I normally say I will only be satisfied if this technology actually touches the life of my grandmother in the village, right? She's able to benefit from these technologies. So that is especially financial inclusion.
Yeah.
We can make that possible. So with all of us working together towards a common goal that is achievable, that is what I see. That is, if we do not divide ourselves as Africans, and the world, and it also makes the world smaller. Just like the internet has made the world smaller, but the blockchain technology will make the world fairer, safer, and inclusive. So that's what I see. I see everybody being a part of everything, especially with hyper connectivity.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, and this is a world that's gonna come pretty soon.
Yes, we're not far off. We're not far off.
We are not far off. Okay, so now let's talk about you as the chairperson of the United Africa Blockchain Association. What is this platform about, and what do you guys do?
Okay, so the United Africa Blockchain Association is a Pan-African organization, and it was started by a group of enthusiasts from around Africa and a few others from around the world. I was appointed chairperson, and what we're looking at is actually creating, firstly, awareness and education.
Okay.
And then from that, we're looking at skills development. We're looking at being able to produce African unicorns as well. So if you look at, we're running a program that we're calling Reaching and Teaching 1 Million People on blockchain in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we're calling this the Train the Trainer protocol. So what we're doing is that we're partnering with schools and universities and other institutions, but firstly we're onboarding high-level learners, right?
Okay.
And these high-level learners will now help us educate
the rest.
the learners, and the learners will now remember that is just the school institution, but we also want to reach out to the community. So now we give those learners a mandate to actually reach out to a minimum of 10 people in their communities.
Okay.
And then they report back to us. That way it sticks in their minds. That way they reach out to another person, and then we're actually working towards our goal. And once they report back, those that are interested will now undergo the technical aspect of the technology, and we will ask them to build use cases that are based on the problems they're facing in their communities. Yeah. So if I come from a mining community, for example, right, we'll have to look at, okay, what problems are we facing, and how can the blockchain actually help solve these problems? And then we'll actually ask them to build those use cases on the blockchain, and then hopefully we have startups from there. So it's a holistic approach from education to actual having startups and incubation.
Okay, so I'm actually aware of the challenges that people that are passionate or into the education aspect of the blockchain that they have, which is trying to break down what the blockchain technology is down to the illiterate out there, helping someone that is not technically inclined to understand the blockchain technology. So I'm going to ask you, Yaliwe, how do you guys intend to achieve this particular goal?
Okay, so remember, like I said, we're educating high-level learners from different cultures, different countries, right? Mm-hmm. So one of our mandates is to ask them to educate their communities in a language that is familiar to them. Okay. So they have to make it easier. So if you love that your community loves to bake, you have to educate them in a way that they understand through a baking structure. You will have to work around that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so that's huge. That's huge. So this particular particular trainer initiative. So what countries are you guys looking to touch? Is it just there in South Africa?
No. We're actually looking at 13 countries. So, but right now we are starting with South Africa.
Okay.
We're looking at right now. I'm in Zambia, so the talk that I'm having today is a build up towards that.
Okay.
We're looking at partnering with other people in countries like Nigeria, for example. One of our directors is based in Nigeria. We're looking at Tanzania. Nice. We already have a partnership in Tanzania. So we're looking at the DRC. We're looking at Zimbabwe. We're actually looking at Rwanda. We already have a number of schools there that we'll be working with. So we're looking at most of the African countries, Cameroon as well right now, Ghana, yeah.
Okay, great. That's awesome. It's been an interesting conversation with you, Yaliwe. So before I let you go, what are your final words on the show?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. And
you're welcome.
What I'd like to say is that Africa has a long way to go, and we are all in this together. So now is the time for collaboration.
Okay.
We need to collaborate as much as possible in order for us to do a lot of things. There's no time for competition right now. Let us work together and actually bring Africa on the world map in terms of the blockchain technology and the fourth industrial revolution as a whole.
Wow, thank God you mentioned collaborations. Yeah, that reminds me, partnerships. So is this particular platform open, to partnerships from every other, some other blockchain platforms or companies across the world?
Definitely we are.
Okay. All right, Yaliwe, thank you so much for making our time to speak with me on the show. I duly appreciate. Make sure you enjoy yourself and enjoy the week.
Thank you so much and have a lovely day further.
Yeah, it's a bye. Bye. And that's it on the show. We've come to the end of this episode of Inside Blockchain Podcast. You can visit our website at cryptotvplus.com for news updates, trends, sources, and links. You can follow us across our social media platforms at Crypto TV Plus, and stay tuned to every of our podcast series as the drop on cryptopodcast.live. Yes, you can also find our podcast on SoundCloud. All right, and you can also listen or join me live on our radio shows, which holds every weekend. That's Friday at cryptopodcast.live/live-radio. My name is Tony Obiajuru. Until I come your way next time, make sure you get yourself some of our materials, our sources, and be updated with everything that has been going on in the blockchain space. Till I come your way next time, it's a bye for now.